So about a week and a half ago, we did a monster origins video, and I said if you wanted to see more, to upvote, and if you didn't want more, to downvote. Since then, that video has become one of the most upvoted videos of the entire past 8 years, which is insane. So it's time for more episode 2, where we're going to take a look at more mythology and origin stories behind some of your favorite Summoners War monsters. At first glance, some of these may be obvious. If you've ever taken a literature class, you may be familiar with one or two of these, but maybe not all of them. So let's start with the harp itself. While we usually think of the harps that the harp magicians play, there's actually quite a vast number of different harps in different cultures way before that. As it turns out, cultures from almost all continents have some form of harp, from Europe to Asia to the Middle East to Africa, and many more. For the context of harp magicians, though, we are going to be focusing on the ones from Europe, primarily in the Renaissance era, where some of these names took shape. A sonnet is a form of poem, originating from the Italian word sonetto, or little song, which follows a strict rhyme scheme and structure, although the rhyme structure has changed throughout the years. Next, we have Triana, which is very likely named after the Spanish Renaissance composer Juan de Triana, who composed music mainly for the Catholic Church during the time of Pope Sixtus, which was the same time period as the Sistine Chapel was constructed. Harmonia could refer to the Greek goddess Harmonia, who is the goddess of harmony and concord, but my guess is that the initial intent was to name her after the term harmony itself, which is a musical term describing notes in consonant pitch relationships considered very pleasing to the ear.
The music from the good old days.
Quite the opposite of dissonant relationships. Celia, the Lightheart magician, could originate from one of two things. The first one being one of the characters from William Shakespeare's literary work, As You Like It, or what I think is more probable, being a shortened version of Cecilia, which could be taken from Saint Cecilia, which is the patron saint of music. Last but not least, there is nothing from the Renaissance named Vivaciel. Well, not directly anyway, which leads me to my assumption on how they got the name Vivaciel. My guess is that it's a hybrid combination of the words vivace and cello. Vivace meaning to play a musical composition lively and fast, and cello, which is a stringed instrument. So the interesting thing about the Fairy Kings is that the Fairy Kings' names actually come from two different places, both mythology and astrology. However, ultimately, the astrological counterparts still do originate from mythology directly, so either way you look at it, they originated from Greek mythology. This part might start to get controversial, but Samath in Greek mythology is actually a female, which kind of leads me to believe that maybe Comtuos based the characters on the astrological counterparts, otherwise they'd probably be wearing a bit more clothing. Samath is one of the 50 daughters of the sea god Nereus and the Oceanid Doris. And if you just heard me say Oceanid and thought about Genshin Impact, yes, they also took from mythology as well, but that's a topic for a different time. I did mention that they each have astrological counterparts though, and Samath is also one of the moons of Neptune, one of the planets furthest from the sun. Now, if we want to go further down the rabbit hole, the planets themselves are named from mythology as well. Neptune is from Roman mythology. The moons, including Triton and several others, were all lesser water deities, but let's just continue with Summoners War since we're so off topic at this point. So next we have Ganymede, which was from Greek mythology as well, considered to be the most beautiful mortal, who was abducted by Zeus and granted eternal youth and immortality. The astrological counterpart would be the Ganymede moon, which is the largest moon in our entire solar system. It's actually larger than the planet Mercury. For those of you wondering why something larger than a planet is not a planet, it's because it orbits the planet of Jupiter, which is the largest planet in our solar system, and it does not orbit the sun. Now we move on to the least important character in all of Greek mythology, Daphnis. So Daphnis was a very minor character in Greek mythology. He was basically just a shepherd who invented poetry that centers around livestock. I'm not joking, that's actually what he did. I'm not sure why that's a thing. Apparently it was popular enough in his day to name a moon after him. Maybe they had a certain romantic connection with livestock back in the day, I'm not sure. But Daphnis the moon, though, is one of the shepherd moons of the planet Saturn. Yes, they're called shepherd moons, being named after shepherds. So Nyx, just like Samath, was not a male. She was indeed a female, the Greek goddess of the night. Her astrological counterpart technically gets sketchy because it's the same name as 3908 Nyx, which is an asteroid, but it's more likely referring to the Nyx moon of Pluto with an I. Obran is of course named after old Obi-Wan Kenobi.
That's no moon.
I'm just kidding, calm down. But actually, Oberon breaks the trend slightly since he's not named after something in mythology, he's actually named after the king of the fairies in Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream. He does also get a moon named after him, though. The moon of Oberon is the second largest moon of Uranus. No, Uranus, the planet. Uranus is the name of a planet. There we go. So between the mythology counterparts being females and Oberon not having a mythology counterpart, I'm leaning in the direction of thinking that when come to a set in the design room discussing names for these, it probably went from someone mentioning Oberon from Shakespeare, someone else researching it, finding the moon, liking the names of the other moons, and then naming the rest of the fairies after moons instead of directly from mythology. Since we're on the topic of Greek mythology that ultimately translates into astrology, we may as well stick the brownie magicians in here since they also go hand in hand. First off, we have Draco, which of course was named after Draco Malfoy.
And I'm Malfoy. Draco Malfoy.
Okay, but for real though, Draco is actually a constellation in the far northern sky, and yes, it also has roots in mythology of course. The constellation is said to resemble a dragon or a serpent, hence the name Draco. Orion is yet another constellation, one of the most well-known constellations in the night sky, and again with roots stemming from Orion the Hunter in Greek mythology. Orion's constellation actually has a lot of different interpretations in different cultures. Gemini, the light brownie magician, is named after another constellation of the zodiac who's associated with the twins Castor and Pollux from Greek mythology. Next brownie magician and next constellation, Aquila, is a constellation of the celestial equator and represents the bird that carried Zeus's thunderbutts in Greek mythology. Thunderbutts? Oh, I see my girlfriend clearly changed the document that I'm reading from. And last but not least, Corona isn't really named after a constellation. Corona is Latin for crown, and while we've been trained to think of it lately as a disease, the astrological version is actually just the outermost layer of a star's atmosphere. It is the part you see when there's a solar eclipse. So there you go, I'm sorry you had to learn things today, but you clicked the button, so I'm gonna have to keep making these as long as you keep clicking. So have a very Thunderbuddy day, and I will see you in the next one.